Hey guys, Dave Ross here, and I'm excited to introduce a three-part series that we did here for Restauratopia. Brian and Anthony sat down with Matt Plapp, the founder and CEO of America's Best Restaurants, and also the author of Restaurant Marketing That Works. Fantastic speaker, entrepreneur, and business leader, and a marketing expert that we were excited to get some information from, and actually did a three-part series with him because of all the great nuggets and information he was able to give us. So excited about this. Buckle up and get ready to go.
Imagine a perfect world where you can build a restaurant, open the doors, and make loads of money. Unfortunately, those days are over. It takes great leadership, hard work, and long hours to operate a successful restaurant. Together, we can make it happen. This is Restaurantopia.
Welcome back to Restaurantopia. We got an amazing episode here for you, part of our three-part series. The first one with Matt Plapp. So grateful to have you here, Matt. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me up here to Cleveland, baby.
Yeah, welcome, man.
In the Hillcrest Studios here on the lake, beautiful Cleveland, Ohio.
Told Max, I'm on a boat. We're going to be on a boat here. I'm like, I think they're really close to the water. And then we get up, I'm like, oh, they're in the water.
Yeah. No, we're right over the water. We got to do the fourth episode.
Yeah.
We're getting a boat. I will make that happen. Is that okay?
Yeah, put that on.
We might do it on the Ohio River. You got any boats down there?
I know plenty of people. I used to own a boat dealership, so I know a lot of boat people.
All right.
Okay. That's fair.
Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into marketing and how you started your agency.
1999, I worked in radio advertising. I graduated college with a broadcast journalism degree.
Okay.
I was going to be the next Dan Patrick.
There you go.
And then I found out really quick that when I was working in television in Cincinnati, George Vogel walked up one day, showed me this giant table that had just tapes all over it. He's like, you see this giant stack of tapes? I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's all the white dudes. And he threw them in the garbage. And I'm like, oh. And he goes, you see all these? Yeah, that's all the white women. Threw them in the garbage. He's like, we don't need any more white guys or white. We need diversity. We've got a bunch of us already. And I'm like, oh, crap. And he's like, so Matt, go into sales. And he would walk me out in the parking lot and he'd say, look, see those cars? I'm like, yeah, those are badass. Like, that's the sales department. You see those? Yeah, that's ours. I'm like, ooh. And so that was his message. And so I eventually, after working for 2 TV stations, trying to see how I was going to do my thing and making $7.25 an hour and working terrible hours,
wow,
I went into sales with WGR, a radio station. My dad is a professional sales coach, and literally, I have no hesitation saying he's the Michael Jordan of sales. Like, he could probably get you to sign up for a contract with Hillcrest. Yeah. And you'd get done like, holy shit, I work there. I don't even have a restaurant. Like, what am I going to do with these steaks? Yeah. And so my dad trained me. My mom and dad were both entrepreneurs. Growing up, they always had businesses. They had insurance businesses. They were both grassroots marketers. My dad sponsored every knothole team you can imagine. His colors were yellow and green, the most ugly colors you'll ever see in your life. And I later on in life asked him why. And he's like, because they were ugly. And people would say, hey, who do we play next week? Plapp Insurance. Well, who's Plapp Insurance? The team with the green and all the yellow and green. Yeah, that's them. It's like, that's why I did it. I knew it would be top of their mind. I'm the only team anybody ever remembered. It's built in my system of sales and marketing. Worked in radio for 4 years, and I became the king of restaurant trade. Because when you start in radio, all the big boys are taken. All the car dealerships like Jeff Weiler and the couple casinos we had, everybody had the big accounts dropping $8 to $10K a month on radio ads. I looked, and I don't know why, but my dad had kind of taught me a couple things. And one of them was a guy named Tom Hopkins, who was a real estate sales trainer back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Went to a sales success seminar thing, and Tom brought up how to build your revenue. And hey, if you're going to make $100,000, which was my goal back then, figure out how to make $100,000. Well, I, instead of going after the big boys, said, hey, what if I go get 40 restaurants at $1,000 a month? I get to the same point as I do with these 8 car dealers, and they don't exist. And so I went to a lot of restaurants, and I looked at our day parts and realized that, hey, the least expensive commercials we had in decent time were like 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. People eat Saturday night for dinner. Yeah. And I also looked at other day parts and went to restaurants and said, hey, let's do some half cash, half trade, $500 a month, $500. You don't need to be, my station reaches the whole market. You're in Milford, Ohio. You don't need to be everywhere. But for $500 a month cash and trade, you can afford to be. And so I quickly became in love with that part of the business. And then flash forward, I guess 6 months into my radio career, me and my dad and brother started a boat and RV dealership online. And I wasn't a tech person. I bought a book on how to build websites on Adobe PageMill. We had a vision for a consignment boat dealership online concept that quickly, within like 3 months, went into a brick and mortar. And then within 4 years, we were doing $15 million a year in sales.
Wow.
Wow.
And we grew quick.
Was it like a For Dummies book? Is that what it was? Do you remember all
book?
those books like AOL for
Yeah,
Dummies
yeah.
and Excel for Dummies?
Yeah,
Like,
I actually interviewed a guy.
They
Yeah,
do.
they do. I
They
interviewed
do?
a guy yesterday
shit.
on my restaurant marketing expert podcast that was the commercial lease negotiating for
I
dummies.
just saw that.
Yeah.
Commercial
I just
lease
said that.
negotiation
That's so
for
funny you
dummies.
said
Yeah.
that,
And it was funny some of the stuff he said. His internet went out at the end. We're going to redo it, but so I read that book, built the website. This is really where it took off and what I learned, what I know now. Around 2003, a guy named Glenn Warner, S&S Computers, RIP, he died a few years back. He had brought in, he was our IT guy. He's the one that sold me the Adobe PageMail book. And so meanwhile, I'm doing both jobs. I'm working in radio and 7 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday, and every weekend I'm working at the boat dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing the online stuff. And I had no clue. Like I'm probably at that point early on the equivalent of what most, I would assume, no independent restaurant owners are with the internet now. Not really there. They're running a business. But I had to learn it. And so Glenn comes in, and he was our IT guy. He comes in, we're having a virus every month. And I'm like, Glenn, just shoot me straight, bro. It's $2 G's a month to fix this virus. Are you planning the virus? He's like, what? And I'm like, I just, if you want $2,000 a month, put us under. He's like, I'm not planning the virus, man. I'm like, well, how is it happening? He's like, because you have stupid people here. And I'm like, okay, well, help me fix them. And so he put a software in our computers. And at this point, we had, I think it was like 17 terminals or 20 terminals. So everybody had a login. And they were full disclosure to them. Hey, we are tracking everything you do. We have to find the virus. It turned out to be a very attractive female employee downloading adult content, and which made her like the most desirable person in the building. Different story. Okay. But about 2 months after that, Glenn, and you said I could say anything on here. No, Glenn brings this binder. So we find the virus is done. Glenn comes to my office, brings this binder, and I wish I had it, man. It would be gold. It was literally like 12 inches thick.
You still have it?
No, I wish I did.
Oh, there it is.
It's got to be somewhere, but I don't know.
It's in the archives, huh?
And I'm like, what is this? He goes, this is why your dad's going to want to fire everybody and why you're going to love it. I go, why? What is it? He said, well, categorized by website. This is the website usage of all of your employees the last couple months. I'm like, okay, explain why this is relevant to me. Yeah. And he's like, well, you're a marketing guy. All of these websites, majority of them are what are called chat rooms. Remember, this is like 03.
Oh, I remember chat rooms.
And I'm like, okay, well, what's a chat room? I didn't know what they were. He's like, so let me go. Let's go to fishing.com. Go to fishing.com. There's like 70,000 people on it right now talking about fishing. You guys are a bass fishing boat dealership. Your employees are on here all day long in between talking to customers, talking about fishing. And he's like, your dad's going to want to fire everybody. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're all fired. And he's, they're not working. He's like, you can leverage this. I want you to help you, give you an idea. And so he did.
The IT guy's telling you this?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was forward thinking.
Glenn was also, before he passed, was Gorilla 3D printers. He had created like one of the first 3D printers for local businesses in Cincinnati. It was a big deal.
Oh, that's cool.
People get so prolific, right? Like it's fascinating to me.
So
student of the game.
I guess. Yeah.
So I take this list, I look at it, I analyze it. And oddly enough, for whatever reason, every one of these websites had an agreement where $500 a year, you were a sponsor of something exclusive. Like every one of them. The one was Bass Boat Central. At the time, it was like 28,000 active daily users around bass boats. We sold Triton, Skeeter, Bullet bass boats.
I mean, there's no more niche-y than that.
Not.
I mean, there's not like another level of niche-y, like unless it's bald guys who,
wear beards and with blue shirts
and fish for bass. I mean, it's crazy.
And so I looked at all this. I contacted these companies. I found a way, and there were big rules, which cracks me up because this is what got me into it. Was you had to have your exact name, you had to have your company logo, you had to have a link to your company website, and you couldn't sell. Well, I was always taught from my dad, you don't sell anyways. You educate, you inform. If you educate and inform enough, like my books I've written, you could take what I do and copy, which a lot of people have, and that's great. Most people that realize, hey, I'm better off paying a pro for it will come to you. Yeah. And so when we did this, I went to all of our employees. I pulled them in one by one, and I acted like they'd already forgotten about the tracking of everything. And they'd already forgotten about the cute blonde, so maybe not. But we're walking the office, and I'll never forget this.
She made an imprint, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I'll never forget this one conversation. Sean Weeden was one of our guys, and his username on like fishing.com was like Fat Sean 74, something funny, something comical about him. And I said, Sean, I got a problem. He goes, what? I go, well, I bought a sponsorship to this website called fishing.com. I'm on it every day. I'm like, you are? Yeah. I need your help. What do you need? I go, well, we are now the exclusive Triton bass boat dealership for fishing.com. And part of that is that you will log in every hour and answer any fishing boat question related to performance of the bass boat, but you can't sell. Your name can't be this. It has to be Sean Wida. It has to have our company name. And I had no clue what backlinks were in the internet. I didn't know what SEO was.
Yeah.
So I did that with 17 of our employees across AirstreamForums.com, ArcticCatATVs.com, Bass Boat Central, Fish. It was like 15 or 20 chat rooms.
So what's your investment at this point? Like as far as sponsor?
Like $500 a year for like 10 websites.
Oh, it's not a month.
It was a year.
Oh, a year.
Oh, it was stupid.
Oh, wow.
Like when the guy from Canada, his name was Al, he owned BassBoatCentral.com. He's like, Matt, it's a big investment. It's $500. And I'm like,
oh, let me think about it.
How often? He's like, oh, annually. And I'm like, we were dropping $300K a
Every
year at that
single
point.
year?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, my bad. I'll take it. And so about 6 months later, we were a top Yamaha dealership already, Yamaha Outboards, which was probably a lot behind me on this water.
Oh, yeah.
Great product. And we always crossed a lot of boundaries. We were one of the first fishing boat dealerships with a web presence back then, and we were selling boats across the country. The guidelines were different, and we weren't selling things for under cost. We were selling them for good margins, but we were also very responsive. If you emailed our company, you heard back right away, like a week later. And so we grew that way organically through the internet. Well, then you throw the gasoline on the fire, which is these chat rooms, and now Plapp's Pro Outdoors is all over the country.
Yeah.
So I show up to Nashville, Tennessee, Grand Ole Opry. A guy named Ben Jarrett, who was the head of marketing at the time for Yamaha, walks up. He's like, Matt, I need to have a conversation with like 3 people in suits. I'm like, oh shit, what'd I do?
Yeah.
And
You
he's
can
like,
stop us crashing down.
He's like, and this is no lie, I want to show you this website. It's GOOG. I'm like, what is it, Google? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what is this? He's like, it searches the internet.
It's a new web crawler.
Yeah, I had no clue what it was.
Yeah.
And so we go to Google, and he puts in Yamaha 4-stroke outboard motors. Plapp's Pro Outdoors comes up, number 1, not Yamaha. And I'm like, bro, I didn't do it. And he's like, yeah, you did. I'm like, I didn't do it. He's like, you're not in trouble. I'm like, yeah, I did it. And he's like, can you explain it to me? And I'm like, no, I have no clue how I did it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, kind of told him our strategy with these chat rooms. He's like, well, I need your help, because I was on what was called the Symposium 20, where they took the top 20 Yamaha dealerships, and every 4 months they flew us to a different casino city: Atlantic City, Shreveport, Louisiana, Vegas. 7 days there, eat, drink, have a good time. I don't drink, by the way, so it was always funny because I was the only sober person on these trips.
Yeah.
And
Which is a blast, by the way.
yeah, it's just reverse psychology. My dad, when I was in middle school, and my brother said, hey, here's the condoms, here's the alcohol, do it at my house. My brother was drunk that night using the condoms, and I was watching, I guess. I don't know. I never drank. And my dad's like, yeah, it worked on one of you. But so he's like, when we'd go on these trips, it was all about putting together the top practices of the best 20 dealers, because there was 3,000, and they would just send it to all the dealers in a print form. Like, hey, this is what the dealerships are doing. Like, can you go back, figure this out? Because all tides what's the saying? All tides,
Rising tides raise boats.
Rising tides raise. Yeah. He's like, that's their concept. And that was our oath we had given, that if you're going to be in this 20, you got to be willing to disclose everything. Yeah. And so I went back to Glenn and said, hey, explain this Google crap to me. And he did. And when he explained it to me, it clicked. I'm like, oh shit, let's go. And so now it was like, hey, I want you guys on there more. If a customer walks in the door, you need to be on the chat. Maybe have them hold a minute if you're chatting. But no, we went hardcore internet in like 03, 04, 05. Wow. And that's what rocketed our company. Well, in that same time, I had a lot of publications. Boat and Motor Dealership. I was on the front cover of this place that was selling boats on the internet. And this is in like 05. It's on the wall. We have a picture of it. We have it framed on my wall in my office. Thank goodness I did keep those things. Yeah. We have an article the Cincinnati Business Courier did about how this guy named Matt Plapp was doing stuff in the boat business and comparing some of the stuff we were doing online with Procter & Gamble, a local company. Mm-hmm. And so when my radio clients saw that, now they're calling me like, hey, bro, what's up, man? You want to come lunch today? I'm like, what you got? Yeah, let's we'll catch up. So I go and have lunch. Like, hey, man, like this stuff, can you tell me what this internet stuff is? I'm like, yeah, sure. What if we give you a car? I'm like, and I was making a lot of money. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, I'm like, I don't have a marketing company. I own the boat dealership. He's like, yeah, but you know this stuff. We'll give you a car and you help us with this stuff. I'm like, okay. So next thing I know, my house is getting landscaped. I ate free at restaurant. I had like 7 or 8 companies that were good Cincinnati brands that I had relationships with that I was just helping for free, and it was a hobby. Well, by late 2007, I've always been a workaholic. And by late 2007, I would usually be at the dealership by 7 o'clock, home by 7 or 8. And my wife would come downstairs at 10 o'clock, and I'm on the computer downstairs at the house. What are you doing here? I'm like, I'm just working on a marketing plan for this company. why aren't you at the store? I hate that shit. Like I had gotten to a point where I realized like we had 40 employees, the stress, when I said I should have seen the collapse coming from '08, the stress the banks were putting on us, going from calling us every 2 months about stuff to calling us every day.
What's your floor plan?
What's your floor plan? Have you guys sold any boats today? How's your line of credit? And I got to a point where I was stressed out of my mind. And so we had come to a conclusion. Me and my dad decided, hey, we're getting out of the business. We put a plan together to wind it down by October of '08.
Oh, wow.
I went back into marketing consulting in April of '08, started my company we have today, got a gig with the Reds and Bengals doing some broadcast marketing sales and traveling with the team. Actually landed on that airstrip right here. I'll tell you, that's a funny story. I'll tell you later. Almost died, I thought. It's the first time
it's like 120 feet long.
It's the first time I've ever heard a Delta pilot say, hang on, we have a quick stop. And me and Carson Palmer, our heads hit the seats.
Yeah.
But apparently they can land there and drop everything off and take off without stuff. They used to. That was back in like 2008, 9. Yeah. So at that point, I had started doing consulting, and me and my dad went to 2 days a week. My brother was still full-time, and we hired a wind-down specialist to come in. Well, that was like April, May, June. Well, July of '08 comes along, and we went the year before we did $1.4 million. July of '08 we did $48,000.
Wow.
And we were like,
it's over.
Where'd the money go? Like, because we had $80,000 a week in payroll. And we had $200,000 a month in interest payments, and like it was very leveraged by the banks. And
but that's the dealership model, though.
Oh yeah,
you have the floor plan, and you're very leveraged.
Yeah,
like no one owns all the cars on the lot.
No, and so we basically collapsed, and we could have rebounded, but there was no bailout, there was no PPP, there was no idle loans. It was I lost no shit at 32 years of age $1 million cash that summer.
Yikes!
Because I was dumb enough. Me and my dad, especially, my brother didn't have the money in there, and his with his relationship with his wife, he wasn't able to stroke a check and like take money. I'm like, hey, we need to make payroll. Here's $200,000 this week.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to make payroll next week. Here's $100,000. Well, I turn around in August and our attorney's like, stop.
Yeah.
It ain't getting, the economy's done. It's going to be years. You guys need to get out of the business. And then we just did. It was a tough pill to swallow because my dad had, at 32, losing $1 million cash. I was like, whatever. I did it once, I'll do it again. My dad was in his 60s.
Yeah.
And my mom had not worked in 10 years. And she's like, oh my God, I'm getting the job. I'm like, you're not getting the job. So long story short, that's how I built what Matt Plapp is. And we built Driven Media 2008 and on to a marketing firm around 2015. It was actually not around. It was April 26, 2015. Nick Ellison, who owns Hofbauer House, Newport, Columbus, and Pittsburgh with two other fellas, used to always tell me, Matt, I can't deposit likes. We were spending $1.2 million a year on marketing for them. For their 3 independent restaurants. Well, they're a franchise, but kind of operate independently. Each one does like between $6 to $9 million in sales.
They're like a hybrid. They're not like a Chick-fil-A or
no.
It's different.
Yeah, it's unique, almost like a licensing deal more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's much more like what it is.
And so they hated the internet, and I loved it. And we were doing just the shit that restaurants are not doing today. We were doing in 2012, 13, 14, and 15 with them and just doing great. But they didn't understand it. Nick had a flip phone. Karen, his assistant, would read emails to him, and then he would read his reply, and she would email. And so
that's almost better than some of the people I know. They would have them printed, put on their desk, and then respond.
Yeah. And so when I'm trying to get them to spend $4,000 a month on Facebook ads, Instagram. I don't know if Instagram was back then, but Facebook, we had YouTube pre-roll. We had YouTube videos. Yeah. I had a company in Columbus, Ohio that would produce 5 videos a month for me with the brewmaster about that month's seasonal beer. They were really good things, telling the story of the beer, why it's paired with this, how it's made. And so when he told me, he literally, never forget, he's like, Matt, you, and he didn't have an accent, so I don't know why I had an accent. Maybe I was really German. But he's like, Matt, you can't deposit likes. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean, Nick? He's like, well, you got all... Pittsburgh went from 9,000 Facebook fans to 39,000 in a year with your help. I can't take that to the bank. Prove to me I can deposit likes. I said, okay. 2 weeks from now is National Pretzel Day. American holiday. Big time. I'm joking. You guys are supposed to laugh there. It's not.
I was like, pretzels sound good right now.
Shit. I'm in learning mode. This is something I didn't know.
So that was April 26th. I said, it's 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
We had built up a huge email day. They actually had this kiosk I had went and rented that when people would walk in, they could walk up and do scratch-off lottery games on a kiosk, a little touch screen. It was like $1,500 a month, which they hated. They made me take it out. But it was getting 5,000 to 6,000 email and cell phone numbers a month in the kiosk.
Well, Where can we get those?
Oh, they're everywhere. That's easy now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I've not seen that.
That was great. But my brother worked for the company. That's how I knew who it was. He had
Okay.
gotten the job after the dealership went out of business, worked at this company called 360 Horsepower Marketing. They came up with this idea. They worked with casinos, and they're like, Matt, you're progressive enough to do this. So I did it. Well, he's like, he got rid of it. They all hated it. That was like the one thing they hated I did. I'm like, dude, it's getting data. Like we don't know who's walking in here. And so we did that, and National Pretzel Day comes up. We had a great database. I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make one Facebook post. National Pretzel Day, buy one, get one free. The day of it was half price pretzels and beer cheese. So what it was $9.99 item. It was the number one P-mix on the menu. And when people eat pretzels, they drink more beer, which is the goal.
Yeah.
I said, we're going to do it Sunday. The Sundays are dead. The beer gardens aren't rocking yet. Baseball's not in full swing yet. So we're going to do it on a Sunday. We're going to do one Facebook post and one email. And it did I must say the number was like 18 grand in sales from that promotion on that Sunday. And he calls me Monday morning and goes, you were right. You can deposit likes. Have fun. And so I started doing marketing at that point at a high level. And after about a year, I'm like, man, we're really good at doing this for restaurants. This is a client. This is the only vertical we work in that can reuse data over and over and over.
Yeah.
Because like I eat out. We don't eat at home much. Like I might eat DiGiorno's and Pop-Tarts, and occasionally I'll make ribs. And my wife says she makes chicken pot pie, but she actually buys it at Costco and it's heated up. It's good. And she does a great job with that. But we both have retired from cooking. And so we eat out a lot. And I'm like, there's plenty of people like me, especially the current generations. For sure. Like Max, do you eat out? Do you cook at your house much? Exactly. He doesn't even know, like a microwave's probably confusing. No, I'm just kidding, picking on him. But
he thinks that Uber Eats is.
Yeah, he's like, I eat out all the time. I eat at home all the time with Uber Eats. But I realized that data was going to be more valuable than of every business we worked with, car dealers, chiropractors, you name it, the restaurants could reuse the data over and over. And so I started working on scaling up from being a Cincinnati marketing firm to nationwide. And by 2017, we were. 2018, I published my first book, Restaurant, was it? Let me remember it now. Don't 86 your restaurant sales. And I knew that people said, what does 86 mean? It meant they weren't the right target.
Yeah, right.
Independent operators know what 86 is.
Yeah, we do it every day.
Yeah, and so 08, 09, or 18, 19, 20, just built up the company, published third book last year. And that's where we're at today is our focus is, we've defined our focus a lot more along the way. And we used to be a done for you product where you bought our services and we did this acquisition model of acquiring data. When the pandemic hit, I found out that none of our clients were using the data. It's like, hey, one client, you've got 18,000 emails, cell phones, and birthdays in this database we've built. What are you guys doing with them? Oh, nothing. We just let you build it and do the front end stuff, and we just haven't gotten around to it. Well, when the pandemic hit, we went to all of our clients and I went to my employees, number one, and said, hey, no one's getting laid off. Nobody's getting fired. We got plenty of money to just last through this couple month bump.
10 years later.
two, maybe 3 weeks, and it's over.
Maybe 3 weeks. And I said, so we'll be fine. So let's, the next couple months, I want us to focus on not acquiring new customers. I want us to call every client and find out how we can help them. And so we did that. And what hit me the biggest was late May, or actually it was early June, because the numbers were from May. A guy named Brian Picard called me and said, I was like kind of teared. I said, man, what's wrong? Is something wrong? He's like, I'm just calling to thank you. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you pandemic proofed my business. I'm
Nice.
Like, what do you mean I pandemic proofed your business? What does that mean? He's like, Matt, they were one location barbecue joint. They had no drive-through at the time. They had no carry out. They had no online ordering. 99% of people walked in, sat down, ate, got sauce on their face and shirt, handed them cash and left.
That model is going to March of 2020, and that's what we saw across the board with so many restaurants. I mean, maybe they took phone orders, maybe, but they didn't do that well.
Yeah.
And had no online presence
Yeah.
at all, had no online ordering. I mean, think of that. At March of 2020, the world's coming down around you, and your concept isn't built for what's going to happen in the future.
It wasn't built for 5 years ago. Because that's the stuff that I'm preaching today, we were doing at our boat dealership in the mid-2000s. We sold boats via email.
Not just boats either. I mean, you're talking Tritons and Skeeters.
Triton,
$50,000, $60,000, $70,000 boats.
Okay, expensive boats.
Yeah.
And I remember selling a
I
boat.
like bass boats.
Yeah, I remember selling a Triton boat to a guy, Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
We're in Kentucky.
Yeah, how do you get at the boat?
Came and got it. Flew out here. drove out here and got his boat and drove back.
I would do that.
And I remember asking.
You can't get it, but I would totally do that. I would stare at it the whole time too through the rearview mirror. Yeah.
I dealt with him personally, and I remember like marveling, like I wanted to close. We closed the deal. He gave us a credit card over the phone. We ran the credit card, wired the money for the rest of it. Later on, it was done deal. Yeah. He's in the dealership, and I said, man, I got to ask a question. This is the weirdest, and this is probably, if I had to guess, around 2004, 2005. This is the weirdest shit ever. What? How many dealerships that sell Triton did you drive by from Washington? Like, not Washington, the capital, like Seattle, Washington, to Kentucky. He's like, and he had the number. I don't know. It was like 17. And I'm like, you know this? He's like, oh, yeah, because I thought about it the whole way here. And I said, why? He said, because when I went online, number one, and looked up Triton Bass Boats, you were the first place that popped up, which tells me something because, okay, there's some trust there from the online gods that this is a place I need to look at.
It's funny. He probably couldn't even define it, but it was a gut shot at SEO 101, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he said, number two, you were the only place I could find that had a professional website with your products displayed correctly, which to me would be a restaurant today not having a damn PDF on their menu, on their website.
Yeah.
And he's like, number three, when I emailed your company, somebody called me within 5 minutes. He's like, the dealership near my house that I emailed 2 months ago still has not contacted me.
Yeah.
And so to me, you earned it. I didn't mind driving. I didn't save any money. I paid the same price I would have paid out west because you guys held your margins. He said, but it also was, I knew that if a problem arose and I needed to have something shipped, it would actually happen.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was like we were doing the stuff that restaurants aren't doing today.
It's funny because I don't want to minimize what you were doing back then because I think it was pretty visionary. But essentially, what it comes down to is you just mastered the basics, man.
Yeah, completely.
You just fundamentally were sound,
yeah.
and that's it. It's really, and we talk about this all the time, mastering the basics at extraordinary levels until we learn to pals. But it's like really, it doesn't have to be more difficult than that. Just check the appropriate boxes.
Yeah,
and
follow the SOP. I tell my employees all the time, like they don't follow certain things. They don't have a checklist, and I'm like, I want you to imagine you got like one of our employees, David, has a Tesla. I'm like, you got a Tesla. I want you to imagine if there was no checklist that somebody actually made sure the brakes were tightened or that the tire was put on. I'm like,
that's a great analogy, man.
And these things are basic because when we had our boats, and if you've ever bought a new car and you look, a lot of times you get in the glove box, especially like a higher end car, there'll be the checklist in there, the initials of who did the brakes, who did this. It's like, that's pretty cool to see that Tommy H tightened the door, the door bolts down.
Yeah.
But so that's what kind of got us to, when he called me in that June, and Brian back to the barbecue joint, and he's like, the way you made our business pandemic proof is that within 2 days, your team had taken, we had built them like a 7,800 person database for that one location restaurant, Moore, Oklahoma. You had built the 78 person database the prior like 8 months of the pandemic hitting, and he said you were able to help us use it ASAP. We were able to tell people how to order from us, that we still had this, we had this. We also gave our clients a lot of advice about how to attract people correctly. Instagram videos, live videos, name menu packages by your employees. Like he had the one that was called like the Tim Miller. And the Tim Miller was literally, this is what Tim takes home to his family. And that's Tim on the video. Hey, Tim, say hi. Hey, he's got the 5 items. It's $29.99. Doing things that get attention differently. He said we were up 18% in May and not one person sat down and ate in our restaurant.
That is
up 18%
That's phenomenal.
Did they reopen the dining room after it was all said and done?
Yeah, they actually did, and then they ended up selling and getting out. His brother, who was the one that ran it, was having some issues. Just the pandemic got him. Mm-hmm. The overwork, mental things like that, and he wanted his brother's health to be more important. And he worked at a pretty significant, large company in the country, and he's like, "Hey, for the good of my brother." Yeah, we're gonna close. We're gonna sell the restaurant, and we're gonna just come back at a later date and do something different. But when that hit, it showed me a big problem is that we were helping restaurants, like we were giving a bunch of people cars, but not showing them how to drive them.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. And so we were giving.
I think that's the problem with marketing in independent restaurants, right? Is its perception is that it's idealistic.
I agree with you, but I think it's the. People don't know what to do, where to start. They think it's foreign. They're not students of the game. You got to learn it. But what I love what you just said is that you have to attract the people first and collect the data. Yeah. So you can have, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and an episode a few weeks ago was how to connect with 2,000 people on LinkedIn in 45 days if you're the chef or you're the restaurant owner, and market to them. but you have to attract that first 2,000 and taking a systematic approach of doing that, collecting the data, collecting the phone numbers, knowing the birthdays. That's the key to long-term success, because marketing isn't, oh, I'm going to put out one flyer and I'm going to get all this money come in.
Yep.
It's a process, and having that appropriate foundation that you constantly build off of with the attracting the people is so key. I love it.
Yeah. So our acronym is Attract, Build, Retain. And I see all of us have a wedding ring on.
Yeah.
In August of 1995, I attracted the attention of my now wife in college. I was a sophomore. She was a freshman.
I kind of like where you're going here.
Yeah. I attracted her attention. Mm-hmm. And I, no shit, passed a note to Marcia at study hall, because when I was my first year playing football in college, until you got one semester under your belt of a 3.0 or higher, you had to go to study hall. And it was all athletes.
What position did you play?
Strong safety.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
That was terrible.
Yeah, that's okay. You played in college.
Hey, yeah, I mean, play loosely. I mean, I'll tell you, I have a good story about how I got in trouble for eating a pretzel and beer cheese on the sideline. Different story. It actually happened. And I got a reward for it at the banquet later that year, because the coach had never seen somebody eating not only a pretzel, but a pretzel with the dipping cheese.
You had the condiments and everything.
Yeah, because I wasn't getting in.
Right.
And so
I think it's funny how ubiquitous you keep saying beer cheese, and I always forget it's from Kentucky.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just writing a menu the other day for someone. I was like, "Oh no, shit, it's from Kentucky, right?" So like, you guys are so close to Louisville, like it's got to be common down there, right?
I'm shocked that hasn't gotten legs. I mean, because Gatorade took off so quickly, but the pretzel and beer cheese, that's athlete 101.
Yeah, stop cramping, right?
Yep. So I always use the example. So I'm in study hall, and I pass a note to Marcia that, hey, I'd like, the day before, she had reached out and said, hey, will you tell Tom, this guy that I was friends with the football team, to quit, tell him we're dating so he'll quit hitting on me. I don't like him, and he keeps stalking my dorm room. So I'm like, hey, Tom, by the way, me and Christy are talking. Oh, okay, my bad, bro, I'll back off. So the next day in study hall, I'm like, I actually don't mind that if we can talk. So I pass a note, no shit, to Marcia. Marcia looks at it, and she's like, yeah. And I get Christy's dorm room phone number and her dorm room, and we line up a date the next day for Mr. Gaddy's, a little pizza place in town at Morehead State. And we go on a date. Well, I acquired her attention there. I don't get the second, third, fourth date if I don't have her data, if I don't know her name, if I don't know her phone number, if I don't know where she's at, if I don't know how to contact her. And then talk about retention. I remembered her birthday a lot of years. We've had anniversaries. We got 2 kids now. Somehow I was able to retain her for the last, I think it's 26 and a half years right now that we've been together and married. So it's the same with restaurants, is you have to attract attention. But there's a stat I'll throw out, and we can dig in this later on, but I've been to 1,000 restaurants myself personally in the last 2 years. As of 3 weeks ago, I quit traveling outside of a day trip like this across the country. I have personally sat in thousands of independent and franchise restaurants across the country, and we have surveyed. 97% do not make the effort to ask the people's information in the restaurant. 97%. It's on americasbestrestaurants.com/stats. It's a page that's published but not on our menu, and it's where our team submits a form every time. Like today, Luis, Austin, and Ryan are in Owensboro, Kentucky, filming. Doug and the other rest of the team will be talking to the restaurants. We have a second van that's coming back from Idaho right now. It's supposed to be back today. I was hoping to bring it here, but he went snow skiing Tuesday in Idaho at Sun Valley. So
smart.
Have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's on his way back here. But we survey. We have an app, a thing on our phone that I built that we answer 6 questions. Do they have a mobile-friendly website? Do they have a tool on their website to collect data? Do they have a tool in-store to collect data? Do they ask people in-store? That's the key element. Do they ask people in-store for their data? Do they have social media engagement? And then do they have automation tied to their email, text, and data gathering? Because it's not hard that if somebody in your restaurant scans a QR code and gives you their name, phone number, email, and birthday, that you could have it very easily text, email, Facebook, Instagram, and find them on Google that day. Mm-hmm. It's not hard.
Yeah.
And the biggest stat that scares me is 97% of them do not take an effort to ask for the customers. And this is before 2020 to now. So it hasn't changed. It's just, to me, the laziest part ever, because people have made the hardest effort. I was at a place yesterday in Newport on Levee in Northern Kentucky that used to be called GameWorks. Now it's called Velocity. And you have to, in order to get to their place, you have to drive and park in a parking garage, go up 2 flights of stairs, walk through the indoor mall, go into their place. And I said, guys, when you hire us next week, the number one thing we will put in place the next first 90 days, because they're reopening a brand new brand because GameWorks closed, is it will be non-negotiable. Everybody that walks through that door, we will have very creative ways to capture their name, phone number, birthday, email, and visit frequency. And then we'll figure out if they're a business decision maker that could bring parties here. We have a whole series of things we can do. But it's not easy to get here. And that person took an effort. And then the biggest trust is they handed you a credit card. So if they took all that effort to get there, handed you a credit card, you owe it to them to do whatever it takes to get their information.
Not only that, but they're fans of yours. They cross like 5 hurdles to get to you. Like, they obviously love what you do. They would love to hear from you.
They would love to interact with you. I mean, that's the thing. Like, they're already a fan of you at some level. And to have that reciprocation of the interaction is what people want. And that's what people thrive for.
Yep.
What do you think, and this may be the issue too, because we're talking about marketing now with restaurants, and I worked in operations for years and years. That's where I come from. I was a chef, and we're busy, man, and we're really good at what we do, and then we branch out and we do something that's maybe uncomfortable. It doesn't generate. You said you can't deposit likes earlier, so there's kind of a disconnect there from results, right? It's real easy when you're a chef. You cook something, you see someone enjoy it, you get the ego strokes, everything's good, that's success, right? But when it comes to marketing, it's a little more vague than that. You don't see the conversion right away, you don't see the cash right away. So maybe it's like, we have a tendency to regress to our mean, meaning that we branch out, we get a little discouraged, get a little cynical, and then we come back to what we're comfortable and we do that, right? So maybe it's like we don't know what to do with the data, right? Is that something you see out there? Because I think I see it. Like, we all talk about data, but then what do you do with it?
You want the example that you guys can both relate to and that everybody that owns a restaurant can relate to?
Yeah.
So you got a house, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine you buy the house. So you have a realtor, they show you the house. You get with the bank, you buy it, you get your title insurance, you get your insurance, you pay your HOA fees. Imagine if you're never allowed to go see the house. And that all those people that you're giving money, like, don't worry.
It's beautiful.
It's great. It's doing great. In 6 months, you're going to see it. Yeah. In 6 months, you know what? It's doing great. Another 6 months, you're going to see it. You would give up hope that you actually have a house. That's marketing for a restaurant. They've all boosted Facebook posts. They've bought radio ads. The only thing they've ever seen work has a negative connotation to them.
Yep.
Couponing.
Yep.
They'll run an ad in a local magazine. They'll do a direct mail piece. They'll do, I don't know if the newspapers still exist or not. Like, there's a Cleveland Plain Dealer still around.
It is.
Okay. So I didn't know if they still made them or not. I use them for kindling to my fire a lot of times.
That's it.
It's next to the buggy whip.
And so the only marketing they've ever seen work without any question of a doubt is when they've done a coupon. And then their negative is their employee. Oh my God, the people who bring coupons in suck. They're cheap asses. They don't tip. They got the free dessert and left. But it's not built correctly. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we have found is that the reason there's a lack of marketing is because of they've never seen it. They've never got to go in the house and take a shower.
Yeah.
And so like on what we do with restaurants, we've built a system that on the front end shows you enough proof to go, oh, so this is like we're a restaurant we work with that's in Branson, Missouri, an independent operator. It's called it's a Flavor Town by Guy Fieri.
That's a wild town, by the way.
Yeah.
Yakov Smirnoff owns it last time I checked, right?
It's bad.
Yeah.
And so this client of ours, he's got a handful of restaurants. They're all independents. This is a licensing deal with Guy Fieri, or Fieri, however you pronounce his name. I always get confused. And I was looking at the stats yesterday. I was showing a client, a new customer we're working with, who's got a tourist-oriented restaurant, a big independent, that's like $10 million a year.
Nice.
And I showed him, here's 1,700 in Facebook and Instagram ads that were spent in 30 days. That's the budget we spent. It was $1,741. 3,600 people have given us their data from that money. So that $1,700 got us 600,000 impressions. It got us 17,000 engagements online. This is just online. Yeah. 17,000 engagements. Those 17,000 engagements led to 3,800. I was like 3,800 people giving us their name, visit frequency. In this situation, we ask if they're a local or tourist. If they ask they're a tourist, when are you coming back? When are you coming to town next? Mm-hmm. So we can market them differently in the future because there's a lot of tourist places that people go to over and over and over.
Yeah.
And then we get their birthday, their email, their phone number. And so now we've built a database, we segment it, and we talk to everybody differently. But I showed them this, and we were showing this company. They've done $14,000 the last 30 days on that 17. So that $1,700 ad spend has gotten them reach, impressions, engagements, which is vanity metrics. That's what people, oh my God, look, I got likes.
Yeah.
But then it got data. The data got, I think it was 144 visits. 144 visits got like $14,000 in sales or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so they can actually look and go, oh, there's my return. Yeah. And now that's where we say, okay, now it's how you use the data. We've already proven that we've attracted people enough to give us their data and walk in the restaurant. Now you've got to use it correctly. But that's why I think
so. You can use the data more than once.
You can use it a billion times. But you know what?
Yeah, last time I checked, they're not buying 2 Tritons in the same week, but they'll definitely eat at your restaurant in the same week.
No,
twice.
correct,
Yeah.
right?
But we dig into the retention conversation. That's a whole other conversation.
Matt, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I loved hearing on how to attract customers, and where can people find you online? Where can they see your stuff?
So americasbestrestaurants.com. We have 3 brands under my umbrella. But americasbestrestaurants.com is a great place you can find our media company. And then underneath there's marketing help. mattplapp.com is my website. If you can find my phone number online, it's pretty simple to find. I'm open book. Give me a call. Shoot me an email. My team can talk to you. I can talk to you.
Yeah, you're super accessible, man. That's a good
very
thing.
cool.
But I absolutely love that. That's good stuff.
Thank you so much. Check out his book. We'll have the link in the show notes. Thank you so much. We'll send out an autographed copy to the first person to DM me asking for an autographed copy. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, easy peasy, man.
Yeah, any of the platforms, you know where I'm at. Brian Seitz, Matt Plapp, really appreciate it. Anthony Hamilton, thanks so much. This is a high quality pod. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to Restaurantopia. The gratitude that we have for each and every one of you spending your precious time to listen to this podcast is immeasurable. Please make sure to tell a friend about this podcast. And also, if you have any feedback for us, visit us on restaurantopia.com and drop us a line. You can also subscribe on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Thank you and have a great day.
We also want to thank our sponsor, Hillcrest Food Service. If you're a local independent restaurant and are looking for a distributor who has chef and operational consulting, provides marketing support, does menu reviews, and most importantly, wants you to be successful, reach out to Hillcrest Food Service at hillcrestfoods.com. We are excited to announce the Restaurantopia VIP Text Club. Join by texting the word podcast to 844-928-4257. You will get access to exclusive content, industry news, deals, announcements, pro tips, and more. The VIP Text Club is an exclusive community of independent restaurant owners and professionals. Join today. Message and data rates may apply. Please check our website for our terms of service and privacy policy.